Welcome, Serge, to what is going to be a very playful and different series for Serge Benhayon TV on sex and relationships. And I wanted to talk about this, and I want to preface this for the audience at home. I attend a lot of your workshops, and the depth of the presentations are always revelatory. We don't often talk about sex in those presentations, but when we do, it unlocks something at a very deep level for a lot of people. And so I telephoned you last night. I said, I want to talk about sex. To risk sounding like a 90s pop song, let's talk about sex. And that is for the elucidation of the people that don't get to be in that room. So I want to jump into it. Let's talk about sex.
Sure, we can do a Sex in the Rural series.
Sex in the rural. Being out in the sticks that we are.
Yeah, regional Australia.
Love it. Okay, so sex. Let's demystify sex here. Because sex, now that I have a richer understanding about sex from the presentations, when you do talk about it, it's almost as if that's the two-dimensional aspect. That's the functional aspect. You can have great sex and you can have great function with sex, but you kind of obliterate our cultural understandings of sex because you ask us to go deeper to the being that can experience something much richer. Can you talk about the difference between sex and making love?
I can, but before that, let's premise the subject and say that to me, and I have been presenting it for over 18 years or 19 years now, sex is no different to holding hands. It's no different to cooking together. It's no different to taking a stroll, walking, talking, having a conversation, etc. Or passing each other by in the house, in any place of the house. That's an important premise, because if we isolate it and see it as a special event, then we're going to stuff it up. That's a corruption of what it actually is. It needs to be a natural extension of how you live, and it's just a different activity. Be it holding hands, be it going for a walk, or cooking together. What's the difference? Why do we have to make it so climatic and different when it's actually not? I mean, it has its own climax, but so does conversation. So does cooking together. So does holding hands. Going for a walk together is so wonderful. Why do we have to have this extra curricular activity that we go to in addition to enjoying everything that we are? So we need to come back to that. So back to you before we go into the subject.
Beautiful, because what I understand that you're saying there is you're bringing an awareness to the fact that all of those details of life are an energetic transaction between two people. And so if you have conversation that is flat, that doesn't deeply hold the other person, if you cook in function and are just pushing past the other person to get the pot, then how do you expect to then go to the bedroom and have fireworks? And if you do go to the bedroom and have fireworks, what are the quality of those fireworks? What was the foundation that got you to what is the quality of those so-called fireworks?
So if you can imagine, if we hold sex as the be-all and end-all and a special event, then everything else is going to be mundane and much less. So if I don't put effort and spunk and sexiness into a conversation or a walk or holding hands or cooking together, then what am I reserving? What is the quality of me being reserved for some special event that I think I can just turn the switch on and bring it on? It can't. What I've been teaching is that sex is a natural extension of how you are already living. And therefore it's a union that celebrates everything that has already occurred, not that it's going to occur and be anything more spectacular than what has already occurred. So it's a beautiful coming together of let's go there.
It's
a coming together of something that has already been established, and there's no reason to get it out of there quickly. There's no premature switch that you want to evacuate and get out before this thing is going to crash. You want to be there in its beauty as long as it needs to be, and cherish each other. And it's climatic well before it begins. And I'm talking, 3 days before, 4 days before, 5 days before. God forbid it should never go for that long.
Love it. Okay, you mentioned something there. You touched on premature ejaculation. I'd like to talk about both premature ejaculation and impotence in relation to that living that daily life that then gets to that point. I've heard you talk about impotence insofar as that it has a relationship to the heart and the expression, the vascular expression on an energetic level of our letting of love in and letting of love out. So could you talk a bit about what the underlying energetic root condition is behind impotence?
Look, I'm not medically qualified to talk about impotence, and I never will. However, to me, impotence is life. It can be life. You can be impotent in life in terms of not expressing how much you love someone. To me, that's a form of impotence. You should be, as a father, expressing how much you love and adore your daughters, as well as your sons equally, your wife, but also other women as well, and not hold back. So impotence occurs much sooner than just penile dysfunction. And we need to understand that impotence is anything that holds back the love and the spunk and the adoration that we have for other people. So look, if we do that and live with that level of restraint, then it has to transfer to the body. So from an energetic point of view, we are already lacing ourselves with that restraint well before it transfers into the physical dysfunction we call impotence.
So there has to be a shutdown on more levels than one in order for that expression to be shut down.
Precisely. We're shutting down and we're letting one... It's almost like we get let down in the bedroom when there is erectile dysfunction. But what have you been doing? How have you been living? Have you been also explosive and expressive in all your life? Or you're just expecting one moment, one segment of your life to have all the performance qualities when in fact you're not performing everywhere else? I mean, let's go there on the subject. This is about lifestyle. Our life is 24/7. It is not 1 hour of the day. We don't isolate the human being to one part and study that being. We have to study the livingness of a human being to understand the human being. And this is a 24-hour basis. So the real quality of being human is a 24/7 basis, and it's ongoing. It doesn't have a start and it doesn't have an end. It has to be a lifelong study of understanding who we are. So on the subject of sex, we need to come back and say that it is not special, but on another level, it's stupendous. You know, it's better than climbing Mount Everest. It's better than anything else you've ever imagined. It's better than skiing. It's better than surfing. It's better than anything anything. It's better than anything. But so too is holding hands. If you know how to open your body and show that level of transparency. So let's go here. How naked can you truly get? And how naked you can truly get is dependent on the transparency you're prepared to share with your partner, but not limited to your partner, also with everybody else. And that transparency is not a switch. It's something that you can carry all the time. And that's what we should be celebrating here. It's nothing mystical about it. It's very, very simple.
That's beautiful. So let's talk about the level of transparency and what happens when there is a lack of transparency, because there is a lot that's put on sex. There's a lot of pressure that is put on sex to fulfill a relationship. And Cosmo and different magazines sell 1 million copies, of how to get the best O, how to do this, how to do that, how to please your man in bed. There is so much focus put on that at the exclusion of the richness of expression that you're talking about. And so we've set ourselves up, haven't we? Because if we're not taking care of the 90% and expecting the 10% to deliver something that fixes everything, then our focus is skewed.
Look, there's no doubt there needs to be some form of mutual consent to the type of sex you want to have. Of course, it's a function, and there has to be a collaboration on that level. There would be some form of favored movements or favored performances, etc., etc. That's up to each and every couple to understand about each other and agree. What we need to talk about is, how naked are you? How naked are you prepared to go to? To what extent are you able to be transparent and allow yourself to be known by your partner? And this doesn't mean about expressing your greatest form of fantasy and having it fulfilled, but your greatest depth of expressing how much you are willing to love a person and adore them. Now that's a completely different form of nakedness. It's a transparency that allows you to express to the other person a level of adoration that allows them to surrender to their own nakedness and therefore be transparent from their perspective as well. And that's why I call making love a celebration of an already confirmed union, rather than just a coming together for the purpose of a climax, because the rest of your life is not as climatic. Climactic, I should say.
Absolutely. And when there can be like a standing off between couples in that I will only show you so much until you show me, more of you, and there becomes this kind of I won't go there until you go there situation. But what you're talking about here is revelatory in terms of if you think you have a problem with your sex life, that's not actually the case. You actually have an issue with transparency, because the richer your expression and the more you let out and the more you let people in, that actually takes care of everything else in terms of the level of intimacy you can feel making a cup of tea, holding a person's hand, connecting on so many levels, and then not everything is placed on the pressure of, having to have sex twice a week, or having to have this, or having to have some kind of stipulation to feel a sense of intimacy that actually isn't there before you get in the bedroom. That's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, correct. The imbalance comes from the fact that we're trying to make it about some pinnacle performance, an apex that we are missing in our life. And instead of understanding that well before we get to that act we call sex, and I prefer to call it making love, because it's much greater than sex, it's making love. But have we adored ourselves enough to be able to be naked with ourselves on a daily basis well before we come together? And so the key is adore your wife, if you're in a gay relationship, adore your partner. It doesn't matter the gender, just adore your partner and allow yourself to be adored back. And that brings in a completely different body to the scene. But, going to sleep is just as thrilling with your partner, is just as thrilling as making love, because that is making love. Going to sleep in a form of surrender that you feel explosively connected to your partner, that's already making love, and yet you haven't done anything so-called in the sexual sense.